Hello everyone. Today I want to share with you the story of Tusan, a single mother. She lives quietly through very ordinary days, where each morning begins with the weight of making a living and ends with worries that never truly fade. Tusan is not loud, nor does she complain about her hardships. She simply moves through each day in silence, with the resilience of a woman who has long been used to carrying everything on her own. Hai's former lover did not seek out Tusan right away. She did not appear before Tusan, did not confront her, did not ask questions, nor create any direct collision. Instead, she made her presence felt in a very deliberate way, in exactly the right places Tusan had never stepped into and had never believed she belonged to. Those were formal partner meetings, where she stood beside Hai, speaking naturally and fluently, her familiar voice flowing amid polite handshakes. They were family conversations, where she took a seat softly, seamlessly, as if no time had ever been broken, as if her presence there was simply a given. She appeared in spaces that were neat and discreet, places with their own rules, their own unspoken language, where people understood one another without needing to say much. Those were places Tusan only heard about later, through an offhand remark, through fragmented stories, through the hesitation in someone's eyes when her name was mentioned. Tusan was not there, but the other woman's presence was clear, steady, undeniable, enough to be noticed. No one spoke outright. No one confirmed anything. There was no formal introduction, no need for an explicit explanation. But everyone understood this appearance was not accidental, and her return did not need to be announced. Being there at the right moment, standing in the right position, carrying the same familiar poise, was enough to awaken what once existed. Enough to remind everyone that, in those spaces, she had once been the one who stayed, the one who belonged, without ever having to try to be accepted. Once, Tusan met her at a cafe near Hai's office. There was no prior arrangement. It wasn't the kind of chance encounter that makes people freeze or feel flustered. Everything unfolded quietly and smoothly, as if this meeting had already been placed somewhere on an invisible schedule, simply waiting for the right moment to happen. The cafe wasn't crowded. Soft yellow light washed over neatly arranged wooden tables, while the steady hum of the coffee machine sounded behind the counter. The space was calm enough for every small movement, every slow breath, to be heard clearly. Tusan had just sat down and hadn't even ordered yet when she felt that gaze directed at her, not probing, not evasive, but calm and deliberate, as if the woman had been waiting all along. The woman smiled politely. A measured smile, neither provocative nor overly familiar. It was held at just the right distance, pleasant enough to put one at ease, yet firm enough to assert the confidence of someone who knew exactly where she stood in this story. The way she sat, the way she placed her hands on the table, everything was neat, restrained, without a single unnecessary gesture. "Are you Tusan?" Her voice was gentle and clear, neither too high nor too low, as if the question required no further confirmation. "I just wanted to talk for a bit, as someone from the past." No attack. No sarcasm. No scrutinizing looks, no probing or comparative questions. Every word was chosen carefully, each one landing softly, yet clearly enough that there could be no misunderstanding. It was simply a conversation that had been meticulously prepared, from the moment of meeting, the opening line, the form of address, to the unhurried rhythm of each sentence. Everything was perfectly measured, polite, composed, safe enough that no one could call it a provocation. And precisely because of that, Tusan understood very clearly, this meeting was not accidental, and not a single word spoken had gone without careful consideration beforehand. She did not speak ill of Hai. Not a single word of blame, Not one negative detail about his character or his past was mentioned. The way she spoke was careful. Every sentence was kept neutral, as if her purpose was not to damage Hai's image, but to preserve him intact within a picture that had already been drawn. Her voice was even, free of excess emotion, neither rising nor falling, clear enough for the listener to understand that she had not come to judge or erase anything. She did not recount their old love, either. She did not mention the familiar days, did not revive private memories, did not speak of what had once bound them together. The past was set aside, silent and tidy, like a chapter properly closed. She did not use memories as leverage, nor turn what once existed into a tool for pressure. That silence was distant enough to avoid the tone of clinging, yet close enough for Tusan to understand that the relationship had once existed seriously, reasonably, and with recognition. She spoke of the future, not in a dreamy or promising tone, but with the calm rationality of someone who had thought long and hard. Her words sounded like a discussion of a plan, a clear trajectory, where every role had its place. No surplus emotion, no climax, no need to persuade, just a statement of what she believed to be reality, something that would sooner or later have to be acknowledged. His family has always needed a woman who can accompany him in certain environments. The sentence came slowly, without judgment or direct comparison. It sounded like a pre-established fact, spoken in the voice of someone familiar with those spaces, those rules. Not everyone who loves is suitable. There was no harsh conclusion, no challenging gaze, no air of rivalry. Only observations laid out neatly, methodically, as if everything had already been arranged within a clear framework, one in which emotion was not the final deciding factor. Tusan listened. She did not interrupt, did not argue, did not become defensive. She sat still, letting each sentence pass through her slowly and clearly, without rushing to evade it. In that silence, Tusan realized she was speaking with someone who did not need to attack in order to assert her place, someone who only needed to present the logic of the world she belonged to. And Tusan understood quickly, this conversation was not about feelings. It did not revolve around who loved more, who sacrificed more, or who endured more in a relationship. No one here was measuring pain, patience, or the things Tusan had lived through. She understood she was not being compared in terms of love, but in terms of position. You are a good person. She said it very slowly, very clearly, each word placed with care, like a conclusion that had been thought through for a long time, not impulsive, not emotional. It's just that you have too much to carry. Those words carried no malice. There was no overt pity, no condescension, no judgment from above. They were spoken in a neutral, gentle tone, even with a hint of understanding. And yet, it was precisely that calmness that made the statement sharp. It was so accurate it could not be refuted, denied, or brushed off as a simple misunderstanding. Tusan heard it clearly, not just with her ears, but with everything she had lived through in her life. The phrase, "too much to carry," needed no explanation. It had existed for so long, so familiar it had become part of who she was. The responsibility of being a mother, a small child who needed protection, a family behind her with worries that never truly ended. The days lived within limits, scarcity, and self-restraint she had never been free to choose otherwise. No one needed to spell it out. Tusan understood it better than anyone. She understood that if she continued to be with Hai, it would not stop at the love between the two of them. Her presence would bring with it scrutinizing looks, unspoken questions, and heavy silences that Hai would have to face. He would be placed in a position where he had to explain, clarify, and stand between expectations and his own choices, not because he was wrong, but because he had chosen a path different from what others considered right. She knew that her existence would require his family to endure. Endure nameless gossip, quiet comparisons, the feeling of having to accept something not entirely comfortable. Endure having to defend a decision they themselves were still unsure about deep down. No one would say it out loud, no one would make a scene, but the pressure would always be there, quiet, persistent, and not easy to erase. She also knew that people around him would look at Hai differently, with eyes of judgment, that he had chosen the wrong standard. Not wrong because he loved the wrong kind of person, not because he was involved in anything bad, but wrong because he loved someone inconvenient, not neat, not fitting into the familiar molds they believed to be safe and proper. For the first time, Tusan asked herself, not in panic, not through tears, but with a clarity that was deeply sad, painfully lucid. Was she in love? Or was she making someone else pay the price? That night, Tusan came home very late. The familiar road felt longer than usual. Streetlights cast their glow halfway down the path, bright enough to see the way, but not enough to dispel the emptiness rising in her chest. Tusan walked slowly, one step at a time, as if each step carried thoughts she had yet to name. Lavi was already asleep. The little girl lay curled up on her small bed, her breathing steady, her face so peaceful that Tusan stopped for a long while at the doorway. She stood there, watching her child, her heart sinking. In that moment, all the noise of the outside world seemed to recede, leaving only the familiar weight of responsibility and love, the things she had never once set down all these years. Hai was still waiting. He sat there, not asleep, not pressing her with questions, simply waiting for her return as if it were a habit formed without either of them noticing when it began. The light in the room was bright enough for her to see the fatigue in his eyes, yet he did not complain, nor did he reproach her. He asked, "Are you tired?" His voice was low and gentle, no probing, no pressure, just a very ordinary, very familiar question. Tusan nodded. She said nothing more. No explanations, no recounting of what had happened that day, no mention of the meeting at the cafe. Her silence was not avoidance, nor was it distance. Not because she was hiding anything. She had no intention of concealing the truth from Hai, nor did she fear that he would misunderstand or blame her. But in that moment, Tusan knew she was not yet ready to speak. She needed a pause, not to run away, but to face the thoughts piling up inside her. Because she wanted to confront her own question first, before letting Hai step in. Before turning those uncertainties into something he, too, would have to carry the next morning, Hai's former lover sent Tusan a message. It arrived very early, before the day had fully begun. The phone screen lit up in the quiet moment, as if the sender had carefully chosen the timing early enough not to seem rushed, yet not so late that Tusan's thoughts for the day wouldn't begin from there. It wasn't long. No roundabout words. Just a few short lines, carefully selected, each word placed exactly where it belonged. Nothing extra, nothing missing, carrying no impulsive emotion or personal residue. Everything was neat and controlled, very much the style of someone accustomed to managing how she appears in other people's stories. "I don't want to put you in an awkward position." The opening line was gentle and measured, more like reassurance than explanation. It neither admitted fault nor denied anything, simply positioned the sender as someone who understood the situation. "I just hope you'll think carefully for his sake." There were no exclamation marks, no direct request, no coercive tone, no hint of threat or overt pressure. The message was written with absolute calm, as if the sender were certain that merely mentioning him was enough. Enough for Tusan to understand the rest on her own. Enough for responsibility to be placed on her shoulders without saying anything more. Tusan read it. She read slowly, word by word, no skimming, no missing a thing. The message was short, but it was not light. Its weight did not lie in its length, but in how it wore the appearance of courtesy to say what needed to be said. It did not demand a choice, yet it quietly set a standard. It did not issue commands, yet it raised a question the recipient could not avoid. Then she deleted it, without a second of hesitation. She did not keep it to think about later. She did not save it as evidence, nor did she need to read it again. She watched the words disappear from the screen, decisively, silently. She did not reply. She did not argue point by point. She did not justify herself, nor explain her feelings, circumstances, or choices. She saw no need to step into an exchange where, from the very beginning, her role had already been assigned, the one who must consider, must yield, must think carefully. That was the first way she drew a boundary. Not loudly, not through confrontation, but by quietly choosing silence, choosing not to enter a dialogue she understood all too well. If it continued, she would once again be the one who had to carry more. One way or another, Tusan began to keep her distance. Not with coldness, nor with any obvious withdrawal. She wasn't angry, she didn't blame anyone, and she carried no negative emotions strong enough to be named. Everything happened slowly, gently, like a quiet adjustment in how she existed beside Hai. No anger, no arguments, no tense conversations, no reproaches, no questions of why. She still talked to him, still cared, still kept her familiar softness. And yet, somewhere along the way, a small space began to form, not large enough to cause disruption, but clear enough for a perceptive eye to notice. She simply no longer leaned on Hai the way she used to. She no longer sought him out whenever she felt tired, no longer shared everything that happened during her day, no longer let him be the first anchor for all her thoughts. She handled more on her own, held more things back, as if she were practicing how to stand alone again, after having once allowed herself to lean on him. Hai noticed. He noticed through the smallest details, the way her replies grew shorter, the way her silences stretched longer, the way she no longer instinctively reached for his hand when they sat together. He understood that this change didn't come from sulking or sudden hurt, but from a decision that had been contemplated for a long time. But he didn't push. He didn't press her with questions. He didn't try to pull her back with promises or hurried reassurances. He didn't attempt to erase that distance by making himself seem more in need of her, nor did he make her feel she was doing something wrong. Hai chose to be quiet at the right moments, to stay present without crossing over, without adding pressure to what she was already facing on her own. He understood that some choices cannot be rushed. Because if something must be pushed, held together, or dragged forward through endurance or concession, then what remains will no longer be love. It will become sacrifice, silent, heavy, and sooner or later leaving behind wounds that neither of them ever wanted. One afternoon, when the sunlight had softened and the space between them was calm enough that no one needed to rush their words, Tusan spoke up to Hai. She spoke very slowly. Not out of hesitation, but because she had thought about these words for a long time, long enough to know that once she said them, she would first have to be responsible to herself. I need time. Her voice was gentle, neither pleading nor evasive. Just an honest admission that she was standing in the middle of thoughts she had not yet been able to sort out. Not to leave you, she added clearly, as if placing that truth down first, so he wouldn't doubt, wouldn't wonder if this was a step away from the love they shared. But to know whether staying means I'm doing the right thing. The last sentence was softer, yet heavier. It wasn't a question for Hai, but one she was asking herself. Staying, not only staying by his side, but staying in that position, in those circumstances, with all the consequences that came with it. Hai looked at her for a long time. He didn't answer right away. There was no impatience or disappointment in his eyes, nor any attempt to hold her back with emotion. He looked at Tusan as one looks at someone truly facing a life choice, without avoidance, without shifting blame. I don't need you to be right, he said, his voice low and steady, not loud, but unmistakably clear. He didn't need a decision that made sense by other people's standards, nor a choice that made everything easier. I just need you not to remove yourself. The words were spoken calmly, yet carried a deep firmness. They weren't a grip, nor an act of clinging. Just a boundary he set for his love, that he could wait, could endure uncertainty, as long as Tusan did not see herself as someone without the right to choose happiness. In that moment, there were no tears, no promises, only two people standing before each other, understanding that the hardest thing now was not how much they loved, but giving each other enough space to choose, without losing themselves.
Xin chào tất cả mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình nha. Tạm biệt mọi người.